Welcome to the Golden State Media Concepts College Football Podcast, your ticket to all things college football. Are you looking to get your college football fix? Looking to get the latest news on your favorite school's team? Join us as we talk college football from the national championship to college rivalries to bowl games to the Heisman Trophy to which conference is the best. We've got you covered for the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC, and everything in between.
What's going on, everybody? It's the GSMC College Football Podcast, hosted on the GSMC Podcast Network. I am their host, as I am every Monday when this show blesses the listener's ear, the listener's minds, and the listener's hearts. It is Ethan, here to talk about some college football. Not too much grandiose new news, no new real developments, but there's some updates, some things that's happened in the past few weeks that are still relevant to talk about. We're going to talk about those things and more. Got a concession confessions coming up later on at the back half of the podcast as well. But first on the list, we have to do our due diligence here and talk about what's going on with college football and the coronavirus, the updates. So the SEC and the ACC have canceled all athletic activities. So on Tuesday, they canceled all athletic-related activities, including all competition and practice through the end of the 2019-2020 academic year, which includes spring practices and games, while the Big Ten, meanwhile, has announced Friday that their all organized team activities have been suspended until May the 4th. May the 4th be with you. But all team activities have been suspended in pretty much every major conference. So the ACC is conference-wide, ACC is conference-wide, Big Ten is conference-wide until May 4th, Big 12 suspended, Conference USA conference-wide, Notre Dame is suspended, MAC conference is conference-wide, Pac-12 is conference-wide until March 29th, which I would expect it to be extended because by the time I'm recording this, March 29th will have passed. SEC conference-wide and spring games essentially are all conference-wide suspended as of right now, and there have been recruiting limitations placed on NCAA Division I sports. So we're still in the midst of coronavirus, COVID-19, and as the U.S. tries to practice social distancing, make sure you're only going out for essentials, and if not, please stay home unless you have to work, and then go to work, get essentials, stay home. And that's basically a nationwide effort to mitigate and stop the spread as quickly as possible, and to give hospital workers and the medical field the tool power, the firepower, and the manpower to really help nip this in the bud sooner rather than later, because we don't want to end up being in a situation, if you look at what Italy's been going through, it's really scary to look at when you see just how much is going on and how much around the world this has really been affecting, and we weren't particularly on the ball as a country about stopping the spread of coronavirus, or even thinking that it was a bigger deal until really it was at our front door, and some experts say we were pretty late on that as well. So now we're trying to backtrack, and we're trying to really push ourselves into stopping this disease. So sports has to take a hit, and it has been taking a hit. I believe we are in week 3 of no sports now across all the country, across the world. The Olympics was just postponed to 2021. This is probably the biggest thing that's ever happened in majority of people's lives living, especially young people. This is probably the biggest change in young people's lives probably since 9/11. And I'm young. I was too young to really know what 9/11 was because I don't remember being taken from school. I don't remember all the hysteria and the chaos that coensued or anything like that. I'm aware of how big it was and how the impact on the country had after 9/11, but I don't remember living through it because I was too young. I was like maybe 4 or 5 years old. So, but now I'm in the forefront of this global pandemic, and it's quite interesting to really put it into words, if I could find some, about this whole lifestyle, being at home. Because it's one thing to, you feel like you're an inside guy. Like sometimes I feel like I can be extroverted, but naturally I'm more of a introverted to myself sort of dude. And you would think that, oh, well, it's just being inside most of the time. It doesn't matter. It is what it is. I've lived like this before. You merely have adopted the darkness, but I was born in it. Molded by the loneliness, by the isolation. No. But what really comes down to it is that what once was a choice, you chose to stay in, is now a requirement. You do not get to choose. Well, I mean, you could choose, but you'd be dumb if you went outside and did try to do regular activities in the midst of this. But in reality, you have no longer been given the choice. You are required to stay inside, and you can't go anywhere. You can't really go visit your friends right now. You can't go visit certain places. You can't go to the gym. You really can't even go to parks now. They've closed parks because people were so bored at home that they decided to go play basketball at the courts, and that's just not good. So you can't do that. So the parks are essentially closing down now. Any place with any semblance of a large social gathering is not in business at the moment. It's just been a really, really interesting time for the world as we all have to stay home and essentially either work from home if you are working from home and doing stuff remotely, or if you are working, you can still work and go straight there. But there's nothing after that. I'll tell you who's making a lot of money: Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus, cable subscriptions. They're making hand over fist right now just because there's nothing to do. I'm pretty sure Xbox, PlayStation, Microsoft, they're making so much money because the people who didn't have time to play video games now have the ample time now. And and people are really, really figuring stuff out on how to entertain themselves. And we're in 3 weeks now. If you haven't figured it out by now, and you're really, really an extroverted people person, you're outside all the time, and you're going to events, you're going out to the bars and stuff like that. If you haven't figured it out by now, you're probably really, really miserable. And I feel for those people, but it's 3 weeks. It's 3 weeks into this, and a lot of people thought, oh, in a month things will be better. Well, we're getting close, and it's not looking like things are improving so rapidly to where we can go back to our regular scheduled programming. Things are improving slowly, I would assume, but we are nowhere near the green line. We're nowhere near the line as far as getting over the hump for this. So figuring all this stuff out is time consuming. It's very interesting. My mom has had the news on 24/7, and the only thing that ever gets talked about is, of course, the coronavirus updates in the country. There's been other things going on piece by piece, but that's just the biggest news story of the last 10 years, I would say. There's so many elements. There's stock elements, there's economy, there's health professionals, there's politics, governmental agencies doing this, that, and the third. And of course, the biggest thing affecting all of us, if you're listening, is sports and college football. And there's even rumors that college football may not even happen this year. And that's just a whole nother can of worms that we're going to get into later on in the podcast. But man, I can't even imagine. Football and college football specifically seem like to be the ones that have the best chance of actually having a proper season out of every other sport that's going on currently in the world that is on halt. So if they can't go, I can't imagine what's going to happen in near time. But everybody's waiting, executives, officials, governmental agencies, legislators, everybody's just in a massive wait. Everybody's in a stare down. But let's take a break and then we'll get back into it.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines. They got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
So, COVID-19 has been rapidly spreading around most parts of the world and also in parts of the United States. And sometimes it can hit close to home for college football fans. And if you're a fan of Ole Miss, you've probably heard this story come out. But one of Ole Miss's offensive linemen, one of Ole Miss offensive linemen, that sounds a lot better to say personally. So Ole Miss is off. I said it again. Ole Miss, their offensive lineman, who started 2019 as center, has tested positive for COVID-19, and he believes that. Well, his parents tested positive, and he believes that he probably has it too. So he's been living under the belief that he's infected with the virus, and has good reason to have that assumption. His mother has coronavirus and his father has it too. He visited his team doctor, and the working theory is that he most likely has it, and he's just been in self-quarantine with his mother while his father is in the hospital. He was admitted Sunday into the local hospital, and even though he believes his dad is in stable condition, David Johnson, Eli Johnson's father, has been one of the more severe cases, and doctors are assisting his breathing. You follow the virus for 3 or 4 weeks, and you never think you'd be in the statistics that, and then it's like, damn, this is Eli speaking, and it says on Tuesday, it's important people to know it can happen to anyone. And you hear that from every celebrity, every athlete, every person that ends up getting the virus. It's important people know it can happen to anyone. It can happen to you, it can happen to me, it can happen to anybody around during this time. It is, the virus is very easily spread, and it takes no prisoner, essentially. As far as affecting people, it will affect you, and you never really know until the symptoms arrive, because you could be carrying it for a couple days, even a few weeks, before you start really seeing some symptoms. But the coronavirus pandemic is really, really changing the way we live our life, and college sports world has been flipped upside down. But very few athletes have been affected as much as Eli Johnson. He's truly living the outbreak in the most significant way, and he's been speaking to people by phone, via phone, text, and he's at home while monitoring his 5-year-old sister, Tori Kate. The trio is isolated at home in their town. in their town. About 320 people just south of Ole Miss's campus. So it is Ole Miss is. So in south of Ole Miss's campus. That's 320 people in one town. That's probably pretty small, I would think. But the fact that they all got it, that's insane. His whole family just went and got coronavirus. And it's not something that you would think would be a small town thing. You would think the major cities would be around, which they are. The major cities have been the biggest hits as far as places where coronavirus has spread the most, and not to mention states with huge populations. So Louisiana is struggling right now with the virus, and a lot of people have been really, really pushing for momentum of change in the state. I saw Drew Brees donated $5 million in efforts to help with the coronavirus issue, which is should be applauded by all. And this is just another story to aid the general populace to stay home, be safe. Don't think that going out just to go out is smart. Even if, unless it's going to get food, going to get essential supplies from the store, or you're going to work, where do you really have to go? It's just not worth it. It's not worth it for you. It's not worth it for whoever you come back to when you do come back to your home. It's just not worth the effort, what could potential happen. Be smarter out there. And that's just, I think that's what everybody wants you to believe, is to be smarter. Be smarter with your life, with people that you care about's lives. This is not a time for selfishness. This is not a time for thinking that you are bigger than the issue at hand. You're not on a galaxy brain level when it comes to this stuff. Just because you think that you can play the numbers game, the odds game, odds like it, that you may, if you do get it, you'll survive it, and that's good enough for you to go out and try to live your life just because you don't like the change that is happening. No one wants this. No one likes this change. No one likes potentially being laid off. No one likes being out of work. Some people don't like working from home. Some people don't like being home. Some people are home in situations where they potentially don't feel safe, don't want to be in. Some people really don't have a home to go to. So a lot of college students are in college, and they love their experience, not only because you'll never get another real opportunity to be around so much young people in your life, really ever again, till after college. Really never again you'll be around this much youth. But it's just a different experience, especially if you live on campus or you're living on an off-campus apartment, primarily because you don't like your home environment. A lot of people go to school to escape their environment that they already are and to be better suited for the world once they graduate. And now most if not all, are back home, or they're still living on an on-campus apartment. And who knows if they have work? Who knows if they are able to afford rent? There's just a lot of issues here. So it's best to do your part. If you can't donate money, like most people can't right now, you can't donate money. You don't have any medical experience to speak on the matter. The best thing you can do is take advice from medical professionals and stay in your house. Stay home. You can still find stuff to do. I'm sure there's a few books you haven't read. I'm sure maybe you can pick up a new hobby. Learn how to draw. Learn how to paint watercolors like Mina Kimes. In fact, side note, I went to school for art originally. And ever since really going into communications and doing these podcasts, doing radio, doing play-by-play, all that jazz, I haven't really picked up a brush or a pencil to draw real specifically. sometimes I do draw, but it has to be for a specific purpose. So I'll do sketches if I'm designing something in like Photoshop or anything like that. I'll do some sketches like that, but for the most part, it's just not it's not something that I have done in a while because I really put all my focus into the audio business, so to speak. So now I've been thinking about reconsidering. Maybe I'll pick up the pencil once again and brush up on my skills and on my craft that I used to love to do. And I still love the idea of doing it. It's just I haven't done it. But that's just one example of, I'm sure there's stuff that people used to do or haven't done in a long time that now have plenty more free, ample time to do them. And even then, so some people say, hey, the Renaissance happened right after this, that, and the third epidemic that hit the world. This is when art really popped off. So I don't know. Take that as what you will. I'm not too sure what to believe as far as, I mean, historically, the time frames make sense. But as far as if we're going to hit another Renaissance, that's in the eye of the beholder. That's in people who believe in, in creation, and creativity can sometimes come through immense levels of struggle and so many more different things. But we are going to take another break. We're going to take another break here, and we're going to be coming back with a little bit more conversation when it comes to the state of college football and football in general for this upcoming season.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
So, next news in, I guess, a coronavirus update. Not anybody who has it per se, but just something to keep in consideration. Kirk Herbstreet, very, very big guy within college football atmosphere, college football knowledge, the college football universe, multiverse, maybe, storyline. Big guy in college football, Kirk Herbstreet. He has stated crazy things over the last few days that people have reacted to in many different ways. But is it really that crazy? So ESPN College game day analyst Kirk Herbstreet said on ESPN Radio Thursday night, basically making a statement that nobody wanted to hear. So I'll be shocked. This is Kirk Herbstreet speaking. I'll be shocked if we have NFL football this fall. And he also said, if we have college football, I'll be so surprised if that happens. So a lot of people did not want to hear that. That's a statement that nobody wants to know. People are like, you don't know anything. What do you know? There's a lot of time between now and then. There is so much time that we can improve the country's state. We don't need to all of a sudden jump on America's new pastime. We don't have to wish football away. We don't have to put that in the mindset of owners and donors and all these decision makers to make football suspended. We don't need that, right? Well, is it really that crazy to think? As of Friday morning, there were more than 85,000 confirmed cases of coronavirus in the United States, and that's just people getting tested. Spring football has been basically wiped out, has been canceled throughout the whole FBS, and most media days were going to be taking place in early July. NFL draft is still scheduled, but it will have no fans. It will be all in studio, I would assume, in studio production, and it would have a lot of face cam, live stream technology involved. They'll probably be doing a lot of what First Take does with their broadcasts when people are gone remotely. And before the NCAA basketball tournament was canceled, the conference tournaments attempted to have games that were not open to public. This is the one of the potential hurdles that will need to be addressed with football, because I'm not sure if you can't do it with basketball with significantly less people, I'm not sure you can do it with football at all, even if it improves the status of the country. We are about 12 to 18 months from a vaccine. This is Kirk Herbstreet speaking. I don't know how you let these guys go into a locker room and let stadiums be filled up and how you can play ball. I just don't know how you can do it with the optics of it. And, the NFL regular season is to begin in September 10th. College football season is supposed to begin August 29th. And with the season opening between Notre Dame and Navy in Dublin, Ireland, there's just no way that happens right now. At least the landscape, there's just no way. You don't know what time you're allowed to start gathering with people again, because then people will have to start working out. People have to start building up team camaraderie again, be around each other. There's just so much that you have to do as far as team building and being prepped for a season that starts now. It starts now. And granted, a lot of coaches, a lot of strength conditioning coaches, head coaches, assistant coaches have been railing this fundamental idea of working out from home and trying to stay in shape for the potential season to come. At any moment in time, you have to stay ready and be prepared, because you won't have as much time to be prepared. You won't be able to work your way up. You can't show up to, I suppose, camp now. I don't know what you would call it. Advanced camp? Accelerated camp? So, accelerated camp. We'll go with that. Accelerated camp, you can't show up out of shape, unprepared, and looking like you didn't do anything in these past X amount of days, months, weeks. And, that's kind of crazy to me, because besides working out, what can you really do? I suppose you can watch old tape, old film if you want to. You can probably read some books, read some excerpts from certain players to maybe improve your knowledge of the game and your knowledge of the history. And you can watch old film of different players that you would like to model your game after. But after that, there's not much you can do. You can't go work out with a personal trainer. You can't go to the gym. You have to do basically everything from home. And like I said earlier, if your home environment is not the best, not well suited for this sort of lifestyle, this sort of dedication beyond what you're used to, this sort of situation, then it's going to be really tough for a lot of these athletes who are in Division I, Division II, fringe guys in Division III, even JUCO players, to stay prepared, because school and athletics were things that drove them to want to get to the league. That's the number one thing. You have to have your grades up, and you have to be able to play well on the football field, which means you have to keep yourself physically in shape and your athlete shape, the best shape of your career all the time, passing physicals and stuff. So now that's in jeopardy, I'm interested to see how many people slack off to those who really want to still achieve it. And I'm assuming that most people have the dreams of going pro, going to the league. And another thing that a lot of people aren't talking about is if the season does, let's say, get suspended or get canceled, rather, if there is no season next year, imagine. So what happens to guys like Trevor Lawrence? What happens to guys like Justin Fields? What happens to those two? Do they have to basically get a redshirt year and stay another year in college? Or are they allowed to go announce announce to the pros? It is not their fault that they can't play. And rules are basically out of the window right now as far as what is okay, what is not. Because we've never been in a situation like this. We've never had a similar crisis. We've never had a time to where college sports or sports in general have to halt indefinitely for the betterment of the public, the betterment of society. So if I was Trevor Lawrence, if I was Justin Fields, I'm sure they're finding a way to throw some footballs around. I'm sure they're finding a way to stay sharp on their skills and be as physically fit as they possibly can be. But they have to look at this and say that's just another year of them not having an NFL check. They're both going to be NFL guys, but they're not going to be able to capitalize on the money that could be there for them in a year. So if they aren't allowed to leave school and go into the draft, what's going to happen? What could transpire here to where we have to see them play another year of college football? They might redshirt everybody, and if that's the case, maybe they can go. Because, of course, we've heard redshirt people get redshirted, and then they play 2 years, and then they can go. So we're definitely in some unprecedented times in college sports because the league is going to need people to draft, but if the league doesn't go, maybe they don't. But of course, they're going to have another draft, I would assume. It's just, I can't imagine a year without sports. What happens to the well-oiled machine that is the NFL college football seasons? You know, they feed into each other. They are a mutual relationship, so to speak, as far as providing talent for the NFL. It's just going to be insane to me if the year doesn't go with football. And it's also insane to me to find a way for football to continue at this pace and to have people in stands in large communities and big events. It just doesn't sound like a smart idea. But let's take another break.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's gsmcpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
All right, so I'm going to need everybody take 3 deep breaths. We are going to practice speaking very calmly, very smooth. Free your mind of all your troubles. All right, so that's just a little bit of a segue into what we are actually going to be talking about here as I try to continue with this voice but we have some very interesting news about a former player from Stanford trying to teach younger people how to practice serenity. All right, so I don't know if I can keep that up, but serenity in college football. I know, right? That's kind of, what does that mean? What is that? What could you say? What can you say that even means, right? So here we are. Serenity in college football. So Solomon Thomas helps his alma mater seek serenity to strengthen players' minds. Since his sister's suicide 2 years ago, he's become an advocate for mental health awareness and is trying to help players find their inner peace on the football field. Scan down through the body now before shifting your attention to the breath. Stanford players are all frozen in place with their eyes closed. Some are lying down on their backs on the grass. Others are sitting up cross-legged. The California summer sun beats down on their sweaty brows. This moment is of stillness, and Stanford's fall camp practice is a far cry from the loud hip-hop music that typically blares from the speakers as the players are constantly in motion. This is Stanford's football daily camp meditation, a 5-minute transition between the warm-up running and the rest of practice. So, Thomas's sister, Ella, committed suicide 2 years ago, weeks after Thomas's rookie season ended. Since then, he's been an advocate for mental health awareness. Ella was a survivor of sexual assault, and she struggled with anxiety, depression, and PTSD. After her sister's death, Thomas dealt with his own mental health issues and is going through them currently. He cycled through anger, depression, and confusion and learned to find his own mental health routine of seeking a therapist weekly and meditating around two times a week to help him untwist his mind. So now he's donated $5,000 to his alma mater as he was inspired by Cavaliers center Kevin Love, who was the first athlete to donate subscriptions to this app that has been founded to help breathe serenity and meditation. Love's Foundation covers subscriptions for all UCLA student athletes and coaches, so he thought it'd be important to start in college sports as at his own team. Thomas says, and self-love is the most important love you can give yourself. It's important to have that foundation that you can work on every day, so when things aren't going your way, you have something you can go back on, a coping mechanism we all should be doing, no matter how happy or sad we are. So they have a junior tight end, Colby Parkinson, who is currently preparing for the NFL draft. Used to have trouble falling asleep at night because of their class schedule. Stanford practiced late in the day, and the adrenaline from practice made it difficult for him to shut his brain off. He tried everything, putting his phone away an hour before bedtime, moving to sleep on his couch. Nothing worked until he tried the app's guided sleep meditation. So he's used it for 60 days straight or something like that, he says. And my phone kept sending me, congratulations on your streak alerts. And it's nice now because I don't have to use it every single night to fall asleep. I can kind of take myself through the meditation. And if I am restless, I can play it on my phone real quick. So a lot of people have been finding meditation to be quite a interesting thing. You ever done yoga before? I've dabbled in it. I've dabbled in meditation. I do think that it has a lot of benefits, and it could be really beneficial for people who can't sleep, because especially now where you're kind of in the house all day, probably on your phone, watching TV, watching Netflix, Hulu, playing video games, and you just lose track of time because time is moving in a weird place. And you just can't seem to fall asleep. Even I've had trouble falling asleep sometimes. And I never really thought about doing meditation to help with sleep I did it more for setting a sense of calmness and peace into my daily routine, and to help me think of different topics and have a clearer mind. But sleep, wow. If it helps with sleep, then maybe I should look into it, because sleeping has been a troubling thing for me in recent time, and I can't seem to figure it out. I'll be tired for a little while, or I'll be tired in the middle of the day, and I won't sleep it through, and I'll suddenly have this burst of energy because I feel like I need to be doing something. And by that time, the energy is supposed to be gone. It's 3 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, and I just can't seem to rest. My mind is always racing. I'm always looking stuff up online. I like to research certain things. I like to read certain articles and different pieces of work that I feel could be beneficial to know about. So maybe it's a little bit of the syndrome where you feel like you're missing out on things, which wouldn't make a lot of sense if the world was still running at high octane capacity right now, because then everything, you could be missing out on basically a whole bunch of stuff. But even at home, you can feel like, man, I'm missing out on this, that, or the third, or I can't seem to piece together why I feel like if I don't read this article at 3:30 in the morning, I won't be able to move on. I won't be able to close my eyes and sleep. So this might be very helpful for people like myself, people like Kevin Love, people who suffered through depressions, suffered through anger, anxiety, mental relaxation, meditation. It can be very, very helpful to all different kinds of people. I'm not trying to make this segment step on GSMC Fitness and Wellness, who you guys should definitely go listen to if you're interested into more of, fitness, working out, having a clear mind, wellness. They talk about yoga, talk about meditation, I'm sure. A whole bunch of different types of stuff. But I'm not trying to step on their toes, so to speak, with this segment. I just find it interesting as athletes are starting to really, really take into consideration this sort of stuff. I remember seeing LeBron's commercial recently. The app is called Calm, and I have not looked into it yet, but he is one of their big sponsors, to where they have him speaking and his eyes are closed and it's just a picture of his head, but it's definitely LeBron James sponsoring some sort of meditation app or some sort of serenity app. So athletes are getting involved even with their dollars, as well as their voice of reason, their voice of the public. They are public figures to a certain extent, and they have a lot of influence within the public. So trying to do stuff for good, I'm always a supporter of that. So good on to Solomon Thomas, good on to Kevin Love, good on to LeBron. These sort of things help people in times of stress and anxiety, and even in sleep deprivation that can help too. But we're going to take another break, and we're going to get into one of my favorite topics of today's podcast, the biggest fandom of one player in the past 10 years. We're going to start looking at some of the bigger guys.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Okay, so I wanted to do a few interesting segments near the end of the podcast where we talk about, this one in particular, where we talk about the hypest college football players, or the hypeness around college football players. Who had it the most? Who had the most hype coming out of college, coming into college, as players in college? And either it could have worked out or it couldn't have. But here we are. So, hypest players in college football that we've ever seen. I'm looking at a few different lists. I've thought about some guys myself. But number 10, this is a list from Bleacher Report. They have Terrell Pryor, which I have to agree, he's one of the probably the most hyped prospects we've ever seen. In the sport of football, he stayed in the league for a few years. He bounced around. But he was so hyped that he didn't announce his decision on National Signing Day. He waited weeks after for his own National Signing Day. So kind of like how LeBron did the decision to committing to Ohio State. He did that. He was thought to be a 6'6", 230 mix of Vince Young and Michael Vick. So just pure athleticism, so to speak. And he was one of those guys at first where he was so athletically gifted and talented to where, because it didn't work out as quarterback, he ended up trying to switch to wide receiver for some time in the NFL. I remember that specifically. Another guy on this list, Jadeveon Clowney. Now, I remember this specifically. Every time, the moment that Jadeveon Clowney knocked that dude out in the backfield, his draft stock risen to a different level. It was obscene. I've never seen from one play, not to say he wasn't good majority of his college career, because he was, but it was insane how that play pushed him to a different level. He was a top player in 2011 recruiting class, and South Carolina, their Gamecock Nation, was expecting big things from him immediately. He was 6'6", 250. He was a great pass rusher who would likely develop into a complete defensive end like Michael Strahan, Julius Peppers, or Mario Williams. He was expected to start almost immediately in Columbia and should be a top 5 NFL pick. When he's eligible, observers have claimed Clowney as the best player to come into college football in years. That sounds about right for what they were talking about when he was scouted and going into the NFL draft. He was literally the biggest thing since sliced bread. I've never seen a guy, and not to mention he sat out some games in the season that people criticized and said that his work ethic is lazy, or he's kind of lazy, but he has all the tools and the talent. And it took him a while, like every other defensive end, really, except for the Bosa brothers, I would assume. It takes people a while to really get acclimated to NFL pass rushing and trying to defend these offensive linemen who are essentially all Wisconsin-level linemen in the NFL. It's just that people like Jadeveon don't play Wisconsin or play these super, super prominent offensive lineman teams all the time. So, in reality, they never had to go up against this too much. All right, so next, Adrian Peterson, without a doubt, one of the most hyped players to ever come in the league and one of the most hyped players to ever be successful in the NFL I've ever seen come out of college football. Being an Oklahoma Sooner, if you just look at his highlight tape, it was unparalleled to what the stuff he was doing. He's 6'2", 220, ran a 4.3, and he racked up production that equated to 3 running backs in one man. Now, I'm very much, in today's era of football, running backs aren't touted as perennial pieces of offense. It's at least not a big name to where you pay him a bunch of money. But when Adrian Peterson came in the draft, and he was drafted in the top 5. When I tell you he's probably the one guy who's been drafted in the last, I would say, maybe 15 years at the running back position that was worth it. He was worth it. He was getting comparisons to Eric Dickerson coming out of high school. He chose Oklahoma over Texas and USC and was an instant star in Norman, became a Heisman Trophy finalist as a true freshman. He carried the load for 3 years before leaving to the NFL draft and becoming a top 10 pick to the Vikings. And today, Peterson is among the very elite running backs in the NFL and a multiple-time Pro Bowler, including his rookie year. He is the epitome of a recruit that lived up to the hype and produced everywhere he's been. For sure, that is the one. All right, so next, Peyton Manning, Tennessee. Now, this makes total sense for why he would be hyped. His father played in the NFL and was really good, played for the New Orleans Saints. They lived in New Orleans, I believe, at the time. I know their family is still based there to this day. And when he was in high school, people kept hearing about how Archie Manning had a son who was a fine player in his own right. And he went then and watched him play in person, and it was Peyton is going to be better than his dad. And this is the same thing with the new Archie, so to speak, as he might be better than the dad and his 2 sons. So his grandson, who comes from Archie Manning's 3rd son, who is a wide receiver, his son, Archie, might be better than all 3 coming up. The legends of Archie Manning are still in the works. But if you're from the Ole Miss area, if you're from the Tennessee area, if you're from the New Orleans, Louisiana area, you're aware of Archie Manning, the child, Archie Manning, the high schooler. Anyway, 6'6", 230, Peyton Manning was a top overall recruit his senior year in 1993 and the Gatorade National Player of the Year. Of course, we know all the things, like by the time Manning was a junior, he was in the same position as Andrew Luck. He was a lock for number 1 pick, but stunned by many by returning for his senior season and eventually became the first pick for the Colts. Peyton Manning lived up to the hype, I would assume. He had a rocky start, a lot of picks, but he did what he had to do for sure. But I have 2 more. Number 2, you got to think about this, right? Johnny Manziel was the hypest I've seen in a very, 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 very long time. And not to say that he was picked high in the draft, of course, but he was one of the most talked about, hyped up players I've ever seen in sports media because of what he did on the football field. He became an instant celebrity, a megastar, and it all boiled down to if he could really produce at the NFL level. He had his pro day, and people were saying, this is the guy. He can do it. Cleveland, do it. Draft him. Cleveland drafts him. He wasn't going to start at first, and then he got himself in, had a few moments, and then that was it. But as far as college hype, I've never seen a guy so hyped before. He put Texas A&M on the modern map, especially after coming into the SEC. It definitely helped build their trajectory in all of college sports to this day. And I would say number 1 for most hype, maybe Vic. Maybe I have to assume that. Oh man, I don't know. That's pretty tough. Number 1, I got to think Tim Tebow was incredibly hyped up as a college football player. Like just the hype around Tim Tebow and his legacy. He is forever shrined in Florida. He is Florida as far as many people are concerned. You don't think Florida and don't think Tim Tebow. That's just the end all be all of it, really. That's what I think about when I think of Florida. As a team, as a commodity, as a program, you think Tim Tebow played there, won national championships. Him, Urban Meyer, 1 and 2. That's it. I think he's the most hyped player I've ever seen. All right, so we're going to finish off the podcast after this break.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Okay, so you know what time it is. Last segment of the podcast for the day. And we got to end it off with another banger, another heater, another big pitch down the middle, another scorcher, a 108 fastball up top of the zone. Got your batter swinging. All right, I've been playing a lot of MLB The Show, but that has nothing to do with what we're talking about. It's another confessions. Burr, 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 burr. I need some sound effects in my podcast. Another confessions. This one, today's topic is gourmet food. So the word gourmet has a lot of connotation with it, has a lot of impact, has a lot of weight. When you say gourmet, you expect the finer things in life. You expect good cheese, like gourmet cheese. You expect fine dining situations. You expect a meal of high enjoyment and self-fulfillment. It should fill you up with joy eating this gourmet food. It's supposed to set a new standard of how food is supposed to taste and how it is crafted and how it is presented. All right, with that said, gourmet food at a ballpark, at a college stadium, at an NFL stadium, at a basketball arena, you stay away from gourmet food at the sports stadiums, at the arenas. You stay away because you're wasting your money, you're wasting your time. Don't do it. What do you gain from eating something called gourmet hot dogs? You want a gourmet hot dog at the Dodgers game? You want a gourmet hot dog at the Braves Stadium? You want a gourmet hot dog at MetLife Park? Be my guest. Do it. Waste your money. Do it. But I guarantee you, it's not going to taste any different than the hot dog that you get a few rows down that just says hot dog for $6 less, $7 less. Stop wasting your money for the namesake of gourmet. Gourmet food at the highest order is phenomenal because it comes with the standards. You know what you're getting into. Half the time they don't even have to say gourmet. If it says gourmet generally and it's under $18, stay away because it's a waste. It's a waste. You're not paying for experience. You're not paying for elite presentation. You're just eating a fancier piece of meat or a more expensive piece of meat that's still technically a hot dog. It's still a hot dog. It's still a hot dog. Leave it alone. Leave the gourmet hot dogs at the house just because they put some Gouda cheese on it, just because they have 3 different types of peppers instead of just one, because they have red onions instead of, sweet onions, just because they have pickled relish, just out of regular relish, which is already still pickled, but they have sweet heat pickled relish. Leave it alone. Gourmet popcorn, leave it alone. It's still the same thing that's been sitting around. Go get you some Cracker Jacks and get the sticker out the box and enjoy your life for having more money in your pocket and less expectations of greatness that will forever be ruined by the word gourmet. Gourmet does not mean good at those sort of prices. You're waiting in line 30 minutes and you're going to be, I'm wandering around. I don't really know what I want to eat. Let me look at the menu. I'm not really feeling the nachos. Too cheesy. Gotta use two hands, and I gotta hold my beer. I gotta hold my Coors Light. I gotta hold my Bud Light. I'm on my fifth one. I'm feeling good. Feeling great. Halftime's on the way up. I tailgated earlier with the buds from the frat party, but I'm still a little bit hungry, and I feel like rolling the dice. So I think what I'm gonna do, I think I'm gonna get that gourmet corn dog. Yeah, it looks good. Instead of just saying corn, it's made with maize. It has seasonings on it. It looks a little bit darker than usual. It's made from pure chuck beef. I gotta try that one. Good pork, pork butt. I gotta try that one. No, put it away. Put it away. Put your wallet away. Turn away. Run away. Do whatever you have to do. Stop spending money on the gourmet variety of foods at ballparks. You're wasting your time. It's the same thing with buying these premium things at ballparks, because you're not in the suites, right? 9 times out of 10, you're not in the clubhouse suites. Now, clubhouse suite food, never had it, but I would have to assume it's two steps ahead of what they're serving in the stadium concessions. Right? I have to assume that it's better. And that's just to say that for me, I've been inside media rooms. I've been inside upstairs media rooms before when they have food out, and that's better than the stadium food, bar none. So I can only imagine what people are paying large, ludicrous amounts of money to be in a press box, or not a press box, but to be in a suite box. Their food has to be at least 3 steps ahead. Then we're not talking about that. That's different. That's a different lifestyle. You're paying for the experience, so the food has to match the experience. You're paying for a premium experience of being at a game, but your food does not match the experience. So do not eat at home. Eat at home if you're going to spend $16, $15 on a gourmet hot dog. Eat at home if you're going to spend $12 on gourmet popcorn. Eat at home if you can't decide whether or not getting these Chipotle barbecue nachos that essentially are going to be tasteless and useless. The chips are already ruined, or even worse, if they're chili cheese fried barbecue nacho gourmet items, the artery death. Go home and eat. Eat before you go. Eat at the tailgate. I promise you, the tailgate food, the vendors, they need the money more than the stadium anyway. Please eat at the tailgates before you eat in the stadium. At the very least, if you're gonna do anything in the stadium, and if the prices are right, you can drink a beer. You can get a small box of popcorn. You can get a regular hot dog. But once you start passing through the $10 range for one item, you have to reconsider. Please reconsider. It's not worth your time. Reconsider. And that's it. That's all I have to say on that concession confessions. Gourmet is something you have to avoid at all costs, because it will cost you. And that's just how I've always felt. That's how my family has raised me to believe that gourmet is not always the right choice. My mom recently just told me, because I asked her this question to prepare for this, and she said, gourmet just means you're gonna pay. That's the bottom line. So with that said, that is the GSMC College Football Podcast, preparing to wrap some things up. I hope everybody is out there staying safe and doing great things, learning new hobbies, learning new things about themselves, rediscovering old things, and really, really trying to make the best out of this lifestyle that has floored the general populace of the United States. But we shall overcome, we shall be better for it, and we shall remember that life continues on no matter what troubles may be, and the sun will always shine all the time. All right, that's the GSMC College Football Podcast. Thank you all for listening. Don't forget to rate and review the podcast on whatever platform you choose to listen to us. And don't forget to follow us on our social media. So our Facebook, our Instagram, and our Twitter. We do a lot of great content there as well. And don't forget to listen to all the other GSMC Podcast Network podcasts that we have going on. If you listen to the football one, you'll see me, or hear from me rather, with Bryce on Tuesday. Until then, see you guys next time.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts College Football Podcast, part of the GSMC Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcasts on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type in GSMC to find all of our shows from the GSMC Podcast Network, from football to basketball, baseball to MMA, and even soccer. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's episode of the Golden State Media Concepts College Football Podcast.